Hello, this is Chris, back with Flip.
Hi.
It's been a while since you've been on
Yeah, I did. I did a month of
this, getting in trouble.
what? Oh, yeah.
No, that's Flip's Facebook picture that got moved to nothingness because he,
I've been unprofiled. I'm an unprofile. No, yeah, I'm in a 30-day ban. You know what's funny is that the lady that got me banned, there was a group rule. Don't report people. If you have a problem with something, tell the admins, but please don't report them to Facebook. And they do this specifically to prevent this kind of crap. But they threw that lady out of the group. She got thrown out of the group for violating the rules by reporting my comments for bullying, harassment, and racism. And Jessica's like, this was it was an LDS versus evangelical group. And this lady was just going off on a tear. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of a 30-day ban. And like I sent this whole thing to Facebook. It's funny, like, because there's no way to fight it. And that's the thing, is like the part that boils my blood is I remember a couple of years ago, and I don't know if you remember, like, because I'm sure I sent you the screenshots. There's a couple of years ago that I was in an ex-Mormon group that was adminned by a transgender woman that one day was openly, explicitly, unapologetically calling for a Mormon genocide. Literally just
yeah,
saying, we should just kill all the Mormons.
yeah,
And just like out of curiosity, I reported that comment and I got a message back saying, this post does not violate our community standards. I'm not making that up. That's what happened.
yeah.
Meanwhile, I got a 7-day ban once because I called someone a creep.
There's an exact similar kind of topic going on with Tucker Carlson showed it just last night that this lady heard this guy complain about her transgender pronouns on her tag or something like that. So then she bragged on Twitter that she purposefully missed Stick in His Vein and bragged about that a couple of times. So Tucker
Oh,
Carlson
that, yeah.
made a deal out of it. You know, you've agreed to an oath of doing no harm. But that's one of those scenarios once again where maybe that's being a bit extreme or something. Like the girl was stupid and idiotic. You definitely should maybe get suspended if people are doing that, but maybe you could let it slide if the person let it slide. But if the reverse happened, it'd be a national scandal, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Like, was it James Lindsay said the discrepancy is the
dude,
message.
yeah, let's play this game real quick.
Oh, this is old?
Needs a break. It's time to come together. It's for the most important game show of Earth. It's the game where we ask the audience one simple question. What's Bud talking about? What?
This stuff is so good.
Well, I'm gonna actually play it with you.
Oh, yeah?
We're in the game show right now.
Oh, of actual Joe Biden?
Yeah, you ready?
Go for it. I
Here it
almost
goes.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, traveling with them. And that's traveled 17,000 miles when I was vice president. I don't know that for a fact.
What's my talking about?
So there's a word that defines America. He was
What's
traveling
the word?
of the Himalayas, Xi Jinping. He traveled 17,000 miles, which, like, that seems like a real low ball. I would think that, like, a vice president would travel 17,000 miles in like a year. I thought, aren't they always bouncing around? I have no idea. What could that possibly be? What's the word? What's he talking about?
Come on, man.
You got it wrong.
People should
Unfortunately,
just watch Kyle Dunnigan all the time. I'm sad he doesn't put out enough. Like, he's like once a week, maybe.
yeah, it is
We
once
need
a week,
more of him.
every
Yeah.
Thursday night or something like that. But he's also got like a weird taste. Suddenly, people are all up on the Joe Biden thing, or him doing a Xi Jinping thing, or him just recently coming out with this new concept of doing Alec Baldwin, and people are like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And then he does this like a half hour of this weird librarian telling people to to return their book.
I love was it Wendell?
Yeah,
That character is perfect.
and he does
And
most his whole entire show there.
no, but it's also just the brilliance. Because, like, first I thought, like, there's a weird brilliance of taking a real guy like Sly Stallone and then making him into that just the weirdo
Yeah,
that Kyle
yeah.
Dunnigan Stallone is. But then to actually just create Wendell from whole cloth, even though we've all met Wendells in our lives, like he's like
I know him, Wendell.
he's like a
Yeah.
genre of person, but it's just so perfect.
I 100% know Wendell, but it's also funny because people get ready. They're like, oh boy, here comes the Biden, here comes this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, and Wendell, remember to return your books.
That guy's the. I mean, I've said it before. Like, just one Kyle Dunnigan live stream is funnier than the last 10 years of Saturday Night Live. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
All right, put it on 1.5 speed at least.
So this was the subject of the day. Kara left Mormon Stories. I predicted
left-
this would happen within a year, maybe a year out, but it happened way sooner.
She left the Mormonism and then she left Mormon Storiesism.
It's a very, very big, sad deal. And of course,
Yeah.
everyone's kind of hunching on it, but maybe we'll hunch on it, listen to what she has to say here.
But Mormon Stories, we talked about whatever I want to talk about, so let's talk about that.
Does she talk kind of fast anyway? Is that too fast?
She does. That might be too fast. You don't already have it on.
I had it on 1.5. I'll put it on 1.25.
I put this out on Twitter. Pause to read.
I have decided to do what's best for my mental health, the husband and kids, and the overall longevity of my career and happiness, and leave co-hosting, producing for Mormon Stories. Thanks for the good times, everyone. Much love to Mormon Stories, John, staff, fans, and guests.
That is a really weird way to quit a job. Can you
Well,
imagine if you went into your boss and said, like, for my mental health?
Well, that's also like one of the deals. Like Delin also put something out that was also putting up a sign like that. But you kind of think if something were a podcast and it really were amicable, maybe do that on the podcast.
Yeah.
Since this is her last show today with us, she won't be able to come back. Moving on to do some bigger and better things. But no, to have it just suddenly be these like real quiet.
Yeah. But also, like, 6 seconds in and we already got some kind of weird thing. Like, what do you, like, what a weird way to start that out. For my mental health. That you put that first tells us something that you
Yeah.
don't want to talk about.
Yes, I feel more myself. I feel
Does
happier.
there need to be read too? What does that say? I can't even see it. I
feel
think she
more
does-
myself.
So far,
That's
on
one
the
of those-
channel, she does these
that's one-
these video phone tapings where she's doing the vertical thing. But I think she
Yeah.
purposely does it because she knows it looks kind of like cool TikTok-y. Does that make sense? I think she knows that.
Well, it also might be, well, she might be recording for each platform and it's easier just to do TikTok and then put that on YouTube. I have no idea.
That makes sense. But at the same time, too, I think TikTok, I think it'd look better in the panorama view, too. But I don't know.
working for myself and making the content.
Until I can find a studio space of my own, why do you need a studio space? You can.
Kyle Dunnigan, he starts his show by saying, I shoot my show in my house.
That'd
like-
be such like a waste of like added money unless, I mean,
Yeah.
the Lynn, I get it because he got to a level where he can pretend to be the full news program and
Yeah.
wants to have it there. But
Well, yeah, for him, it's very much the window dressing of it all.
I want to make for the ex-Mormon faith crisis crowd of peoples of the world. So I'm going to be getting back into doing my Nuancehoe YouTube channel, my brand new Patreon. And I think that's what's best for my mental health and my family and what's best for me as a comedian. So the people who are asking,
There you go. This is one thing that bothers me. And like, this really isn't just trying to shit on Kara, but it'll sound like it. But you can't call yourself a comedian when you don't ever do anything funny. And I'm not even just like saying you're trying and not being funny, but like, I've just not seen her do, like, I looked it up. Like,
she's
there's
as
a video
funny-
from 9 years ago. There's some bad stand-up, like a 5 or 10 minute stand-up set. And that's all the comedy I've seen from her, you know, but it's like, I'm funny.
I think
I'm
she has a
funny all
couple
the time.
TikTok
I don't
videos.
call myself a comedian.
I think there's some TikTok videos that are presumably supposed to be skit-like, but not a ton of them.
That's things like, and I'm like, really, like, and I'm not saying this like, oh, you're not funny. I'm just saying I haven't seen you try to.
Yeah, you're not a comedian.
Yeah,
I've
you're
been
not
playing-
doing jokes. You're not doing bad jokes.
I've
You're
been
not, like
playing
I said, you're not
music
even
and-
doing bad jokes.
I've been playing music in bands for years and years and years, and I don't like it when people call themselves musicians, and I don't call myself a musician. Like, I think it's like you got to earn a level of you're making a living doing that thing,
Yeah,
and that's what you do, and
I used to call it the difference between a guitar player and a guy who plays guitar.
yeah.
You know? A guitar player is a guitar player. That's what he does for a living.
And I
I'm
know
a guy
that
who plays guitar.
You and I play better than many people who are very, very comfortable announcing themselves as musicians all over the
Yeah, exactly.
Facebook
And that's what Kara's doing here,
Mm.
where it's like, okay, like, because again, like I am objectively funnier on a regular basis than Kara is. I just know I am,
You-
but I don't call
a
myself a
comedian.
comedian. I just-
But also, it's so mean-hearted, and you punch down. So that's you.
Oh,
for
that's
sure
random
can't
punching
call
down.
yourself a comedian.
But again, because like that's things like I think Kara obviously has talent. Like Like,
so.
Kara, I
she
think is
makes
one of those
people
people that
laugh.
like,
She's made some people
yeah,
laugh
like
sometimes.
Kara's the type of person that I believe that like if she actually set herself to learning stand-up craft the way you learn to play guitar, that
Yeah.
she's got the equipment you need to do that well.
Yeah, I know
You know,
a
like
couple local comedians who actually kind of made names for themselves as local comedians, and I could totally see her getting to where she's like getting a good enough 5-minute set, and then that guy's letting her on to do stuff with him. But,
sure. Like I just don't see. I haven't seen even the Anyway,
yeah,
How I'm
32
doing.
seconds.
I am
We suck at this.
really doing so well. Like I am beyond happy with this decision.
That's too
Although
many
there's a lot of
so's. Oh, that's right. That was going to say earlier. The thing that you said that like it's one of those things that bothers me is what I feel more myself. But
yeah,
it's so fatuous, but it's also how religious people talk.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's also a bit of millennial job speak.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, I feel more myself. That's just old. That's Oprah stuff going back decades. But yeah, and then so. One of the red flags that you're not dealing with when people say it's so true. Like, you don't need to add so before something that's true.
Well,
But
I do believe her that it was not a fun place to be in, being at that
sure. Oh
Mormon
yeah, I
Stories
believe that
thing.
part. Yeah,
I'm going to miss. So
undoubtedly.
I cannot say that I have an ounce of regret. Like in the I should have done this. So what are my family's worries now? No, as I think I can explain
I
right
think
now.
later
like,
on she
feel-
says some things that she wishes she had done differently, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, I think also the reason she regrets it would be for a complete different reason than I would regret it. But I understand regretting it.
Yeah.
more myself. I know better what talents I have. I know my brain. I know my unwavering values. Like, and most of all, I know that I am loved.
Unwavering
And
values.
Unwavering. That sounds like church.
I have the most amazing friends. And I wish that I could show my little like 17-year-old self crying alone in her bedroom because she thought that she was cool, but she was all right, but nobody liked her. I wish I could just travel in a time machine and show her like, girl, holy shit, you are going to feel unstoppable when you are 33. It's just like all of the love and friendship and support that I have from the universe. I would tell that girl a lot of things, but obviously that you're in a cult and get out right now, but or give it time, give it time. I don't know. Anyway, Mormon Stories.
I got a message for Kara right now at 33. You are in a cult of your own making in your head right now. Get out.
Give it time. Well, and I don't think time's gonna help.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. I came on.
I only hope that time helps with all this stuff. I do not. The reality bats last thing that of course happens, but the question is can this stuff linger for 2 more years or 80 more years?
Yeah, absolutely.
Last May, Drew Manning was my first interview. It was so much fun. And it is so rewarding. And John gave me an amazing opportunity. And he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Like, it's so good in so many ways.
John DeLynn had you on because he saw something he could use in you, which
Yeah.
was your TikTok following already.
Yeah.
And
There's
so
your
that's
answer.
up front, first and foremost, a big thank you to John and the donors and the viewers. It's been amazing. So I launched my Patreon this week. And one of the first messages I got was from somebody who said that they were a fan of the podcast, but they could tell that I was always going to need more latitude. And that was just so kind. And so if you're wondering what
What's she getting? I think she's getting into it, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
But I have heard one of those other guys, that guy who put up the channel and already took it down, I forget what it's called, that whistleblower guy that I showed you. He was coming out and talking about, kind of from a leftist point of view, complaining about John DeLynn getting away with mistreating women and all that stuff. And he has a whole TikTok channel and he started doing a YouTube video, but he's already taken down that YouTube channel. But he said that he worked with DeLynn for several years. He was part of the what do they call the organization? And
Open
Stories. He said DeLynn was a major micromanager, and so she could be talking, larger sense, but I bet you he was a micromanager on every little level of like. I don't know if that sentence you said there was the best sentence to say on the podcast after I re-listened to it. You know what I mean? I'm betting.
Yeah.
what's up? That's the main issue. Like, it is such taxing work. Can anyone really look at what I did for Mormon Stories? And from like the multitude of episodes a week, many of them several hours long, many of them live with my big mouth, constantly saying things that I probably shouldn't, riddled with anxiety that I could say something that could get me in trouble with Mormons or ex-Mormons or my boss, John, like at any second, in a trauma space with criticism.
Trauma space. I love that phrasing. You are entering the trauma space.
It's a cauldron. It's like a WWE rink. I'm picturing a WWE ring with like the cage match, man. It's a cage match.
You have a like like the recording studio has the light for recording. They need the light trauma space.
And we should do like a skit of Mormon stories and have people enter in as if it were WWF wrestling. Here comes the music. Like, oh no, it's John Larson.
Well, it's because we find out later that some dumb Mormon guy with weird ideas broke her.
Weird ideas. Like it's the same old ideas, just a slightly different location.
Yeah,
that's-
exactly.
which way all the time about how what I'm doing I should be doing better, and just never having the bandwidth to do anything else, and then collapse from exhaustion. Can anyone really look at that recipe and be like, tastes good to me? So, and then there's the money
Mexicans
component
work
to it.
harder than you.
I know a lot of people work harder, but
Yeah, like, oh, you sat in a room and had to use your words
well,
all
yeah.
day?
But under the intentions and desires of John DeLynn, I do get it. I do. Get it.
Yeah.
If you were sitting here talking and you thought that you had to say something that would make John DeLynn happy, I would.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say collapse under exhaustion, but after a while, I'd be like, I do not like this micromanagement.
Sure.
Like, obviously, as I'm sure you can guess, like, you can't pay
But to be fair to John DeLynn, I bet you some of the stuff he reeled in from her was perfectly good stuff to reel in too.
pay me enough for that headache at the end of the day. So many good things, but is it a good life? Maybe if it was on my terms, maybe if it wasn't just John's baby, maybe it was my baby, maybe it was on my terms. But do I want to spend my life that way? I have other love and joy and other things that I could do and grow on my terms, and other talents than try to squeeze myself in a box that's not meant for me. And
That seems a little.
Squeeze myself in the box that's not meant for me. That's the thing that's so hilarious.
That seems a
Somebody
little.
talks so much about privilege. Like, how many people in the world get to wake up one morning and say, you know what, for my mental health, and because, crawling in a coal mine in Botswana 12 hours a day
Yeah.
for $1 a month, I feel like it's squeezing me into a box. It's just like, I don't know. It's just weird to me.
But
that,
I
like,
think that part is subtexting, as they call it, or whatever. She's talking directly to DeLynn right there.
yeah,
Directly to DeLynn.
yeah, I
Like,
guess so.
Like this is your baby and you try to micromanage me and I'm not really free to be me. You want me to be a specific thing. We got all these other people coming out saying John DeLynn uses and exploits women. And on some level, like always happens with this stuff, as I say, Derek Bell, his interest convergence was correct about the neoliberal movement. You know what I mean? Like some of that stuff about John DeLynn being exploitative and that sort of thing, in the sense of he's going to give women chances on his podcast as far as it increases his value.
Yeah,
That's why
absolutely.
he'll do it.
what is that box? It's like John and I are best friends and we're like family, but like when it comes to making content, being on air that much, just think about John and the Mormon Stories brand that he's built, which is incredible, by the way. Please support them. John's approach to comedy, John's approach to comedy. Comedy is near and dear to my heart. His approach to a lot of things. That,
See, that makes sense that, like, John's approach to comedy?
Has he ever done a comedy?
Dude,
Has he done a comedy? Has he done
I-
a funny
Here, I've got.
in his
I
life?
just came up with a joke. John DeLynn tells a joke.
That should be like a 10-second YouTube clip or something, a TikTok. Like, my impression of John DeLynn telling a joke.
This
Oh,
is super racist joke.
super-
This joke,
super-
I'm going to tell the joke. It's trigger warning. This joke
I
is
hate
super
myself.
racist.
I'm super racist. I
I'm-
thought of something.
Here's a
super
joke. I used to think I had priesthood.
But it's
Super
super
racist.
racist.
Let me just say, like, everybody is the product of their genetics and their conditioning and their traumas, and his approach to
Oh, that's her determinism.
Oh, so wait, the three things are genetics, conditioning, and trauma? That's what makes a person. Okay.
Determinism. Determined.
him being a Gen X man and his approach to so many of those various things.
That's creepy.
Yeah,
When she
they
first
are.
when she first said that he's a Gen X, I'm like, well, no, that's not right. And then I thought, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
50 years old is Gen X now.
Yeah. I'm on the young end of Gen X. I think some people try to
Gen-
call our age a little different thing.
We are on the cusp.
Yeah.
Like I was like the first among the first 6 millennials in the planet. And I think you were among the very last Gen Xers.
Yeah, and I think they tried to call a generation something those couple years right in there from like 78 to 83-ish or something else, but I can't remember what. But it made sense because we were kind of the only ones who started school without computers and ended school with computers.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Like I legitimately for not even for school, just for my own dorky purposes, I legitimately used the card catalog at the public library to find a book. And I learned how to do it at school where I was taught to do it. And then yeah, by the time I graduated, I was using the internet for school. So
And I'm a millennial atheist who was raised with the internet and meme culture. And no matter how much like water and oil you put in a bottle and shake it together, it only looks cohesive when you put energy into shaking it. So like eventually you have to stop putting energy into that, and it separates.
That doesn't make any sense, though. I mean, I think you could perfectly
Yeah.
well make a Gen X and a millennial together show at any given time.
you need an emulsifier.
You-
That's a gay Hispanic.
They had it. It didn't work. They got water in the mix or something.
They left it in the sun.
Absolutely nothing personal. Oil and water just need to separate. That's how it is. And I hope that I'll always be friends with John. But
All that has much more encoded into it.
Yeah, no, like there's she's kind of talking at cross purposes, or again, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Because
I
it's
don't
like,
think-
oh, we're really good friends. We're like oil and water.
Yeah, and I loved being a part of the show. It was great to be part of it, but I didn't like any.
But it took
of it at all,
but it
and
took
was
energy
terrible.
that has to stop.
And I would do it completely differently if I was the one doing it.
No
any
regrets.
of this is anything about the criticism of me working for John. I genuinely think the fans have been amazing. Only criticisms that maybe would get to me from time to time are like genuine fans of the podcast who listened to before and then after I joined gave me a shot, genuinely think that I made the podcast worse and less appealing. Those have got to be less than 10%, hopefully less than 1% overall, like the feedback.
I disagree with that. I think for sure the feminist type criticism's gotten to her. She's discounting it right there, but no, for sure it has. The people saying that you shouldn't be giving the platform
Yeah.
to the patriarchy.
Yeah.
People said that I added a lot. People who didn't listen before started listening because of me, and that
I think she added. I mean, better than Delin alone. I'd say that.
For sure.
probably like is the number one comment that I would get in my DMs or from people when I'm walking around Target. And I think that John and I made a really good show, and I'm really proud of it. I stayed way longer than I should have in hindsight, and I beat my head against a wall because of all the good that I felt like we were doing and we have done, and all of the overwhelming support. And
What's way longer than it? She was only there like a year, wasn't she?
Yeah, and also it's funny because like a lot of ex-Mormons say they stayed longer than they should have because they thought they were doing so much good.
Yeah.
I
Just another church.
pushed myself and ignored a lot of signals that my body was giving me. If you remember, like back in October, I was having all these throat problems, and then you push yourself enough, and then you get taken in an ambulance at 4 a.m. to the ER, and then 4 days
Here's the woo. Some more woo coming at you.
later, I'm hosting Thrive Day for Women with 800 people on 3 hours of sleep. Like, I'm an addict for being proud of myself for doing things that other people wouldn't do because they would be smart enough to recognize it unhealthy. And I'm like, not me. I'm just an idiot who likes to go, no, I'll just keep going until I have a mental breakdown, which happened during the Meldrum episode. Long story short with that, anyone who watched that episode, the Heartland episode with He Who Shall Not Be Named,
You just said his name.
anyone who attempted
She did just, didn't you say the Meldrum
Yeah,
episode?
she did.
And then said he should not be named?
No,
That's a
okay.
comedian there, right there. That's
You gotta get a Voldemort thing in, or you're not a millennial. Yeah.
to watch
Yeah.
it. Basically, it's a tough one to get through, to get more than a minute through.
What?
Wouldn't be surprised that episode
It's tough because you guys never let him talk. I mean, I was interested to hear it, and the
no,
scolding that just they couldn't get past the scolding, so it wasn't worth listening to
yeah,
the entire.
and also like Kara, it was tough for you because you were not intellectually and emotionally equipped to
Mhm.
deal with a faith-based belief. Like you can just tell you like you just deal with it on that level. Like I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a level that we know once again that the pressure that you felt was the pressure from those same activist voices that made you feel like you could not be doing that without having to challenge him and test him at every single second, or
If-
you were a baddie.
Because you are platforming. Like, yeah, the only reason to bring Meldrum on is to tear him down and destroy him and make him look and feel as bad as possible.
And make sure that you show that you are not okay with this. You
Yeah.
show that every 10 seconds.
It's
Was
not
that-
enough to not believe the claims of Mormonism. You need to actively hate the claims of Mormonism.
it broke me. It broke
Broken.
my lines of communication with John.
She and
What?
Kathy Griffin. She and Kathy Griffin were both broken by a mean old white man.
That broke her lines of communication with John? Like, why?
See, you're like you talk about. There's an awful lot of subtext going on here because exactly. Like, what do you mean?
For a long section of the middle of it, because I was having a panic attack in the back corner with Jen for a few reasons. And
So weird.
I just felt like I want to do this. I want to do this interview. I want to ask pointed questions to a man. Let's just say a man who my parents respect and love more than me. I want to do this. I'm shaking, but I want to do this. I have something to offer here. Two, not feeling like I have anything to offer. Then to, oh no. I just delivered the most calm, articulate language I can as to why the church is not healthy for a lot of people, to a man who just responded with comparing gay people to people who diddle kids and screw goats. I don't want to be here.
Did that ever happen?
I'd have to look it up, but this past week there's been so much of that, and it's happened over on the channel. The episodes that I've done with Streeter on the queer theory, and there's all this stuff where if you bring up any sort of queer theory stuff or those extremely insane things that are happening, these guys try to say you're equating all homosexuality with pedophilia or something like that. When no, we were talking about queer theorists specifically. We weren't talking about your friend Joey, who's a gay guy down the street.
Yeah, they do that nasty trick. It's the same thing feminists do, where they pretend to speak for women, like, and queer theory pretends to speak for gays. And they don't.
And they don't. That's panned out because I've seen a couple arguments because myself, Streeter, and Jared, who's also on that episode, have had to do some arguing with some people who try to claim we were doing the same thing and telling them queer theorist is not talking about your average gay person, and very frequently the person we're saying that to is a gay person or something themselves, and they don't even get that the queer theorists aren't the same thing as just your average gay person. Like they don't know that where it's coming from. It's the milk, before
exactly.
meat stuff. And I'm sure, I don't know if Meldrum was talking about that. I bet he was, but I highly doubt that he said,
It's all
you
the
say a
same.
gay person? You mean pedophiles? Like, no.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was talking 100% about the real thing that's happening where weird people are pushing weird things on everyone.
Yeah.
And those weird people do not equate to all gay people. In fact, many of the best fighters on our side of this thing are gay people.
Like Caitlyn Jenner is on the Fox
there's
News
some
conservative
trans
side
on
of
the
the trans sports thing.
You got Douglas Murray, you got Dave Rubin, you got, some of the best people who called out the different queer theorists. You can see that they themselves were academics who were calling out. You can look them up. Who were calling out like Gail Rubin and Judith Butler. And those people, you can tell from the way they're talking, they were obviously gay people themselves. And I don't know their names specifically because these were random professors who dared to speak out about stuff. But famously, there's famous gay people who are not into this stuff. There's trans people. There's Blair White. There's what's the other kind of
Andrew Sullivan, Joshua Slocum. There was interesting recently where Sullivan was it on Bill Maher where they were just
on Jon Stewart.
Oh, that was on Jon Stewart. That's right.
Yeah, and that was more
Jon Stewart called him a racist.
theory.
Holy crap.
But Andrew Sullivan's been outspoken about how one of his famous articles recently is like the queer world is destroying the lesbian world because there's almost no more lesbians. There's just almost like a death of the lesbian scene, according to him, because I don't know those lesbian scenes he's talking about. But
because I think it's your classical butch lesbian bar type where it's like if you're just a woman who's sexually attracted to women and just wants to get on with your life, you're an enemy to queer theorists. And I know all these people in my mind of lesbians I've met through my life. They were the kind of lesbian that didn't have to announce that they were a lesbian. I mean, you just kind of put it together because it's obvious. But like, they were very traditionally masculine in the sense that they didn't ask for or desire special attention. They just wanted to get on with it.
I know,
whatever it was.
Me and one like that went to the Snoop Dogg show together, just me and her. And one of the most mind-blowing things to me, I actually even made a cartoon about it once that got some views on Reddit. Maybe I'd never dig it up, but she was a pimp. She could talk to any girls and get all those girls to start talking to us, whether they were straight or not. You know what I mean? Like she would go up to them and get them to talk to us, but she didn't make like any scene about it. She was just natural in it.
Yeah.
And I love that lady to this day. Those types of people have nothing to do in general with some of them are queer theorists, obviously, but
Yeah. But I just like, it's like, I mean, and, like, these are people I enormously like and respect, but like the type of lesbian that, has a short haircut, wears sensible clothes, drives a Subaru Outback
that's
with
exactly,
and
you're
has a big
describing my
dog.
friend that I went to
Yeah.
the Snoop Dogg concert
They have
with.
a big dog, right? And they are as lesbian as anybody could possibly be, and yet because they are, like, socially conservative in the sense that for them, their sexuality is not a political issue, a
Yeah,
personal one,
no,
that
if I
puts
tried to
them
talk to her
on
about
opposition. Yeah.
if I tried to talk to her about any of this stuff, and it's one of the things that I've always kind of made jokes, like, I'll believe that some of these trans people, that you really are a man if, like, I start trying to talk to you about this stuff and you go, "Oh, what's on Sports Center?" Shut up, you know? And if you did that, then I'd be like, "Okay, I kind of believe you." And this lady, she wasn't trying to be trans at all, but she was that type. If I tried
Yeah.
to start talking about the stuff, she'd be like, "Come on, man, you're boring me with this shit. Come on, let's go drive a truck," That's who
Let's
she
talk about
was.
the political theory of human
Yeah,
sexuality.
she did not want to do that at all. Yeah.
I don't want to do this. Okay. And I continued to feel that way as I got in the car and drove home and screamed and cried and punched everything in the car as I sped through a school zone and got a ticket in a full mental breakdown mode. And I thought, I don't want or have to do this. So I pulled myself together that day, enough to do Mormonism Live, which is another podcast that I was honored to be a guest on. That
I remember, like, because that podcast, you remember she was talking even for Kara, she was talking fast in that one. And it makes sense because she was all wound up. And that's not a dig.
She was all high afterwards. It was her coming down from it. But
Yeah.
it could just be on, like, on a level of, like, an employer level that, like, the Lynn was saying, "I'm your employer and you gotta stay here," and she didn't wanna finish that one, and she's like, "Screw this.
Yeah.
You're not my boss." Well, I guess you are if I think about it. So I
Yeah.
better
No,
quit.
she's on the payroll.
that evening, just like I video called it in from my bedroom with Bill Rill and Radio Free Mormon, two other podcasting friends of mine.
We reviewed that one last time where she
Yeah.
openly talked about shrooms when she was obviously on something, and we didn't know people could openly talk about shrooms yet.
Something that I had planned for 6 weeks, something I was looking forward to, but was kind of a mess on, but I still had a good time, I thought. And I want to point people to that episode for more of an explanation of that day and also maybe like swing the comments my way a bit. Recording a podcast with these guys, I'm like mid mental breakdown in the podcast, and the comments are like, Kara, this wasn't her best. She's a dumb, ignorant loser. Okay. Oh my God. So funny. Podcasters,
I'd be interested to go
definitely are.
back and look and see if all that's really in there, but
Yeah. But also, like, how about Kara? That wasn't your best, but that's fine. Try to put it together. Like, because about performing. Like, you ever have a night where at the end of it, I wasn't at my best. And it's because,
yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens all the time if you got some sort of a performance type career. But
yeah.
I guess I didn't finish that episode. That was one of the ones I said on the other podcast. I didn't get through it. Maybe I should watch the rest of it to see if they
I feel
can
like I
see the
did.
full
I don't know.
meltdown or something. Oh, I watched the entire one of where they couldn't get past the race issue, but the one where she had the full meltdown is where supposedly they really got into his stuff for 5 hours. But I got through 1/3 of it, maybe about 2 hours.
Like, how many total hours of meldrum are there? Because, like, I guess I really should watch
There's
it, but I
3 episodes.
just don't
The
want to
first
deal
one's
with it.
2 hours of his story. The second one's the struggle session about race. The third one, they actually get into his stuff too, but that's the one where I told you where it started out, say, "Well, none of us are scientists, so we aren't gonna make any sort of scientific claims, so tell us what you believe." So he'd say what he believed, which obviously has to have some sort of claim to something empirical to it. Like, "I believe that these mounds were this." That's not true. That's not science. That's scientifically false. Well, actually, I think I found no. We're not talking science. We're not talking science. So they were allowed to say anything that he said was not science, but then he wasn't allowed to even try to make the point. That's why I got kind of sick of it because it was they set up this framework that they weren't going to push back on anything, but then they pushed back on everything. And then if he
Yeah.
tried to argue it, they'd shut it down, saying, "Nope, nope, nope, nope. That's for a future when
It's
we've got
like
scientists with us."
it's like trying to discuss science with the Democrat and COVID policy.
Yep. They're
Like,
allowed
they're
to
totally unfair. Yeah,
they're
they're allowed to invoke the science, but then if you bring up anything, you're not a scientist. What do you know?
yeah, it was exactly that dynamic, man.
Yeah. No, although that's the thing. It's like that's one of the things that makes me crazy is that I am the person that has been that asshole for 15 years because I listened to Skeptic's Guide to the Universe every week for so long, where I was the guy when all my hippie friends, and I'm like, not even hippie, hipster friends were like, oh yeah, the corn, everybody knows that high fructose corn syrup is terrible for you. I use agave syrup, it's better. And I'd be like, no, I actually, massive clinical meta-analysis has shown that sugar, and they hated me for it.
But
And then now,
there's a difference with that though, because first off, you'd have like the backing data, but second off, I saw this thing in this book years ago. I forget who it was by, but they talked about, he called it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, when you're just not dealing with and arguing with the person that's worth arguing. And one of them he said is if they stonewall you, like you're not allowed to keep talking, and they treat you with contempt, like the thing he says, oh, like they give you this look like that. I forget what the other two are, but there's a level, like when you brought that stuff up, those people were perfectly welcome to come back at you with any sort of
exactly.
claim. And
Instead, they threw me out of a coffee shop.
yeah, but
Yeah.
now they're like, no, that's not science. You got to listen to some scientists. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, actually, I read something about no. And they sneer and turn their head at you and turn away from you. Like, no, we're not talking about that. And
See,
that's
this
a
is
simple thing right there where you're not allowed to talk anymore or say anything. And then they sneer at you is like,
yeah. But then even like with the COVID thing, like so much of it, because everybody goes, "Oh, science? You don't science. How do you science?" And again, I've always been the super scientific guy, and most of these people take vitamin C when they get a cold. You know, they do all kinds of they buy organic, all kinds of pseudoscientific bullshit. And I just bring up this thing where it's like, you and I have never met a human being that was born after 1950 that had polio. We've never met somebody who had polio, right? And every single person we know has had the polio vaccine. And so we know the polio vaccine works. Meanwhile, everyone I know got the COVID vaccine, and everyone I know got COVID, including myself. So, like, I don't need any data. I don't need any peer review. I don't need anything to go, that vaccine isn't working. Like,
that's not a vaccine.
that's not a
It's a treatment.
vaccine in any way
Yeah,
that we've
at best.
considered a vaccine in the past.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
you're not allowed to say stuff like that.
If a Christian family in Texas says, you know what, I'd rather not take it now, that person is a society destroying, grandma murdering, anti-science conspiracy theory. It's just completely insane.
But I think that level of conversation in anything is always impossible to like that guy says, it's Gottman, it's John Gottman, it's 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. He used the scientific method of evaluating couples and couples that spoke, and he evaluated thousands and thousands and thousands of couples who spoke together, and he noticed things that later seemed to mean 100% chance of later divorce. And
Huh.
one of those things was contempt, and one of those things was stonewalling. And the contempt is just like they're giving you a sneer and they're not going to give you a thing like that. And the other one is just, you're not allowed to talk. We're not talking.
Yeah.
And any one of these issues, from Mormonism to the vaccine to any one of these things, the stuff we're going to bring up next, right when we get past this, is that people just would refuse to talk about it. They'd stonewall about it. We've lived in the past 4 or 5 years of stonewalling.
Oh yeah.
It drives you nuts. And we're stonewalled. I mean, in the ex-Mormon community, not that they have to platform us.
Yeah.
You can literally tell people, hi, I'm mid mental breakdown. Sorry if this explanation of free will isn't my best. And they will literally be like, I will be disregarding that.
I thought she argued it well. I think it's the free will argument that's not great. I don't think she
Yeah.
particularly said it bad.
This framing that she's doing, like I know she's reacting to something, but the way she's framing, like, you can literally tell people, like, well, no, you didn't say that. And then if you tell people I'm in the middle of a mental breakdown, and then you start going on about free will, like if I'm being a serious person, I should consider, well, you're in a mental breakdown. Should I take everything somebody who can, like, it might, like, just a few weeks ago, my schizophrenic friend said, I'm having a serious psychotic episode. I'm not going to take everything that guy says seriously from that point on. I'm going to be like, oh, you're having a psychotic episode.
What are the chances you think we're going to keep watching her channel or her stuff at all? I'm not.
Pretty-
I mean,
pretty
she does
slick.
2-minuters and stuff like that, but to me, it's
Well-
not much different than like Zelf on the Shelf, which just doesn't like interest me that very much. Either.
Well, the thing is that, I mean, I don't know. There's no original content there. Like I just saw, because I watched this thing, YouTube suggested the most recent thing she did. And it's a 2-minute version of John Larson's How to Build a Transcontinental Vessel episode. And it's like, that's kind of the issue. Like, I mean, I'm sure she'll have her audience with like young TikTokers,
And it'll be
Like,
done in the
you know,
millennial TikTok way.
yeah,
and
but like I don't see Kara ever advancing past the ex-Mormonism 101 gig.
Ex-Mormonism
Like,
101 TikTok style delivery.
yeah.
You are a person. I want my content, bitch. Like, so anyway, so I took a break after that episode. I knew either now I'm done or I'm going to slowly phase out. But that week break was insanely good for me. I hadn't taken off really any time from Mormon Stories to not think about work because there's always something that needs to be done or something, someone needs something from me, right? So it's settled.
Sounds
You
like
pick up one
she's
end of the
slowed
stick
down,
and
so
you
I'm
pick
gonna
up the
sleep.
other one too. And the other end of that stick just never sleeps. So when I was actually able to have space from it, put the stick down, my mind felt so clear and I didn't realize how much I wasn't seeing my kids, not like just spending time with them, but like seeing them and having bandwidth for them. So we had some board meetings. We talked some things through. And then more time and space I got from the podcast, the more I just loathed the idea of going back, and I put out a number of what I would need to be paid.
Yeah, that's one of the things too. She said you
Earlier
got
she said
50
there's no amount of money, but now she
Yeah.
admits it. No, there was
to
a
do
number.
it, actually knowing full well that it wasn't even like what's my sanity worth. So I don't want to do it. John wants a different podcast than what I bring to it. In some ways he wants the same things, but in some ways he wants different things, and that's totally his call to make, and that's cool. So I put out a number of what it would take to kill all of my ambitions for what I feel like I want to do on my own.
6 figures,
So
which I think he's already paying her like 70, 80 or something like that.
just all these dreams and fantasies that I've been putting on hold to do 8-hour Mormon Stories, Gay Crisis interviews, which I love and which I'm honored to do and that I was able to do for the last year. I will never downplay how amazing that is and that opportunity.
I was guessing that number, but I don't know.
But knowing that
Yeah.
even if they said yes to the number, knowing that they wouldn't say yes, like whole day in hell before they would say yes to the number that I gave them.
John Delen's got mouth to feed, his own. I mean, he's got a bunch of other bills, which are Margie probably gets some, and then himself. I don't know what he pays Gerardo to do his.
I bet you Gerardo can ask for a raise right now.
Yeah,
But kind of putting
He
it out there as like a
should.
token of goodwill, like trying to say like my heart's still in it. So I think I make better content. We make better content when I'm there. I think I appeal to a younger audience. I think more women connect with me and more people listen to it because I'm there. And so more people, maybe I hope you get more out of the podcast because I'm there. And I was kind of willing to keep going for that reason, but it's hard. So it's not just a money issue. Like I have other things more in my lane that I could be doing. So I love John. I pity him that he has to do the crappiest job sometimes. It's not fit for human consumption to do. So go easy on him. This week is delicate. He's got some tender family things going on. So please, everyone, please support everything to do. Give them your love, your best compliments. Don't give them any flack. They are sensational human beings. And I'm just really grateful for everything Mormon Stories brought into my life. I have so much love in my life. Mormon Stories has brought into my life. I have more love than I know what to do with. Like I can't even count the number of guests that have come into my life because of Mormon Stories that have become friends of mine. I'm friends with John Larson now, what is my life. So I think I will be doing a lot of cool stuff on my YouTube and on my Patreon next. And I have no complaints with life. And I just feel enveloped in love and gratitude. And if I can find a space to podcast and people want to support that, that's cool. My heart just aches for my friend.
it does feel kind of like a testimony meeting of like a family moving out the ward or something like that.
It really does. Yeah. It's all
And
very religious.
the people that I met on the podcast, and I'd be so sad if I, for any reason, going to miss out on meeting any more amazing people, helping different perspectives be told.
It's like when there was you're in a ward and suddenly a Relief Society president got removed kind of quickly, but it wasn't because of some sin or something like that, but they still are going to have like a meeting where a fast and testimony meeting, and they're going to get up and say their little piece, and you can tell they were salty about something. So this is what it feels like.
It's like this water cycle where people come on to be interviewed and I get so much from it and I'm able to then share their wisdom and be a better podcaster and things. So any way that I think I can provide good value to the Mormon ex-Mormon community, I want to do that. So Maddie, I can't even name everybody
People are.
that I met through the
No,
podcast.
I know some of them are. They're just
So
on the
like family,
podcast.
so
here and there.
many others. There's just so many stories out there that deserve to be told. And I mean, John and I would get.
And I want to say something else. I believe beyond every fiber of my being that this is God's one church. Oh wait, no, that doesn't come quite.
3 offers a day at minimum. There's so many good stories to be told, and I'd be sad if I wasn't able to be part of a vehicle to be able to tell just more really good stories. So maybe I can figure out a way to keep doing that if the support is there. I'm already really proud of so many people coming through on my Patreon, and my merch store on Redbubble is also a great way to support me financially too, as I make content. So if you find value in that, I am just grateful that people find value in what I'm doing and I get to keep doing it. And if it validates them and it validates you and helps you leave a legitimate cult, then just keep expecting bigger, funnier, hoier things from here on out. All right. Love you guys.
Legitimate cult is a funny phrasing.
Legitimate cult.
Yeah, that's I don't know there's a word for what that is. I can't think of it right now. But yeah, no, I was like, yeah, she could have just wrapped that up and said, in the name of empathy, in the name of empathy and righteous love, I quit Mormon Stories.
Let's
Yeah, no, like, I mean, obviously good for her, you know,
yeah.
like, yeah,
Except I don't think she'll be as successful without it. I mean, she might still have some of that TikTok success or whatever, but it'll be,
well,
you
that,
know, just
like, I don't
phase
know,
out a
that,
bit.
yeah, it seems like she could probably do something on the internet,
Yeah.
but I don't see it be doing ex-Mormon stuff. Because for one thing, she's diluting, you know, it's like inflation if she starts yet another ex-Mormon podcast show. I don't know how much demand there is for it because there's so many already. Roast pork.
This Dave Smith does a libertarian podcast. The whole first part of it was Joe Jorgensen, the lady who ran as the presidential candidate. She's kind of
Oh,
neat to
yeah.
call out Dave Smith because Dave Smith's getting almost big enough that he might be your future libertarian presidential candidate. You really might see that in your life. This guy who was a comedian who used to run around with, or what are those other guys? The Legion of Skanks. Which they're
Huh.
pretty wild guys. Gosh, what are their names? The one guy who ran that roast competition in New York. You remember those roast battles? There's a bunch of roast battles run by Louis J. Gomez. Louis J. Gomez and Big J. Okerson.
Legion of Skank.
The Legion of Skanks were those three: Big J. Okerson, Louis J. Gomez, and Dave Smith. They're comics. They're pretty well known comics.
Huh.
Oh, that you might have 10 years ago or whatever, you might have seen them appear on something like the Daily Show or something like that, just out of their comic fame. They might have been the types of people who'd appear on uh, Last Man Standing with Colin Quinn or something like that, or what was that called? Tough Crowd. That's what it's called. But he started this podcast where he just started talking openly about being a libertarian, and he's gotten big enough and big enough followings, and he's done enough debates that he's almost kind of the front runner. There's a couple different factions of the Libertarian Party, but he's kind of the front runner. He's the guy who called out Joe Jorgensen for putting up these Black Lives Matter tweets. But she spent the whole first part of the podcast here kind of smearing him, saying that because of some of his jokes earlier in his career, he made a joke about if you take 12 drinks, it's not rape. It's on you for taking 12 drinks, you know?
Yeah.
He has a longer explanation about that, but this is just them going over something else that's in the news right now. You've probably seen floating around.
Brian Stelter, our favorite little piggy. Ooh, we've got a good one. We got a good one for you guys. Let's just get right to the clip, and I hope you like roast pork.
For coming. My name is Christopher Phillips. I'm a first year at the college. My question's for Mr. Stelter. You've all spoken extensively about Fox News being a purveyor of disinformation, but CNN is right up there with them. They push the Russian collusion hoax. They push the Jussie Smollett hoax. They smeared Justice Kavanaugh as a rapist, and they also smeared Nick Sandmann as a white supremacist. And yes, they dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop affair as pure Russian disinformation. With mainstream corporate journalists becoming no more than
first year student at the university, nailed it. Gotta say. That was an excellent opening to the question with, what was it, 4 or 5 really good concrete examples of them pushing what is demonstrably fake news. And I mean, look, it was a great point to just be like, look, you're up here, you guys are all slamming Fox as fake news, but look at CNN. Then there's these really good examples, very crisp, because the truth is that no one's even really arguing anything other than that. Like at this point, right, they've all conceded the Hunter Biden laptop.
I'm going to jump to the rest of the question.
Yeah.
that the canon of journalistic ethics is dead or no longer operative. All the mistakes of the mainstream media and CNN in particular seem to magically all go in one direction. Are we expected to believe that this is all just some sort of random coincidence, or is there something else behind it?
So that's a similar question. Could have been the exact same question that I've been trying to yell at John Larson and John DeLynn, because they only watch official channels of news. It's the exact type of question that might throw them off.
Yeah, no, it's like, it's obvious. Like, John Larson thinks that there's no such thing as Antifa leadership. You don't get that opinion by investigating Antifa. Like, it's just that simple, because investigating Antifa, it takes 5 minutes to find out that it is real. It's not just an idea. It is absolutely organized. But John Larson, somebody he trusted, told him that Antifa is just an idea and it's not real, and it has no leadership, and that's what he believes.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that you try to scream at them, because like they will, on Mormon Stories, purvey the CNN worldview as if it's the default worldview.
Or like, my brother told me that black men being shot with their hands in the air in the act of surrender while saying "don't shoot," quote, according to my brother, happens all the time. Right? He didn't arrive at that accidentally, and he didn't arrive at it by looking into statistical data available. He got that from the news.
Yeah. On Triggernometry, the guy who got kicked out of Mumford and Sons for saying Andy No was brave. He did
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It's worth listening to. I won't show very much of it. Right.
See, that's the guy where it's like, I kind of hope like he has the same kind of thing as Kara, where it's like, nah, you're better off having left that and going off on your own.
For sure. But these guys get into the other thing that was kind of big in the news that guys like most of the stuff I know with my mom, but most of the stuff they never get corrected on it. They never even know that they got corrected on it. They have no idea that there's follow up very, very frequently on this.
Wasn't speaking of the narratives that have been perpetrated in the media. There were a couple of interesting acquittals related to some fairly big scandals that have been going on. So I guess 2 people in the plot to kidnap Whitmer have been let off because it was determined basically that the FBI entrapped them into that plot, which basically we've all known about for quite some time. But it was interesting to see that there was so much evidence of it that even our corrupt criminal justice system, which always seems to fall in the favor of law enforcement, particularly federal law enforcement, that they even got off there. And then there was the other case where the guy who was involved in January 6th, who I guess entered the Capitol building, he got off because he had video evidence of Capitol Hill police letting him in to the building. I just thought both of those were very interesting stories and kind of speak to this thing where there's this huge created story, this huge narrative emerges. And then you find out actually that even in our insanely unfair criminal justice system, the evidence was just so overwhelming that the courts are sitting here saying, yeah, what the media was telling you, that's not at all.
That's the type of stuff that people I know who are in that bubble and never hear. I mean, the Stelter answer to that thing was like, I don't know what channel you're watching. That's not our channel. And that's the only way he answered that question. People who are sitting there watching this stuff all day, they don't ever get corrected. They don't ever find out what the truth of it is. They never get their feet held to the fire about any of this stuff. And it's one of the things that Larson and DeLynn talk about those things so uncritically while standing on top of a mountain of, we're just complete empirical truth people. And if we're wrong about stuff, you can tell us we're wrong about stuff.
But
and
then it'll stonewall you.
It'll stonewall you. You're not allowed to talk about none of this stuff to them.
I was actually just thinking about this very topic this morning, in that like my deep and abiding love and commitment to the idea of tolerant free speech. I was having a little bit of a Blackstone formulation dilemma, is that like I want the laws against libel to be extremely very, very hard to win an actual libel case. But like I'm sad that Kyle Rittenhouse can't just sue the f out of everybody. I believe that it's better that 1,000 lying journalists go free than one person gets censored for saying something somebody didn't like. But like, yeah, it bothers me. It bothers me like on like a cosmic level and also the personal level for Kyle, that he can't get the vindication that he deserves by dragging every one of those people into court and on the record having it hammered on paper. You lied.
Yeah.
You prick.
To me, that's almost all that I'd ever want from them, but it's got to be, because there's all this stuff that they do on those websites of fake stealth editing where they do correct the New York Times and different things by all this time later going back and just sneakily changing like a little paragraph or something like that. To me, I don't care if they have to pay out, whatever. I would just like it to be very well broadcast across the whole entire nation. We lied about this. We were wrong about this.
Yeah, even if they don't have to pay anything, just the admission.
We've been biased, and our bias has got the better part of us. Sorry, that's it.
We destroyed a 17-year-old's reputation for political convenience. Our bad.
I like this little answer Victor Davis Hanson gives this question. It's short.
I'm interested in Victor's view of the social class aspects of the hysterical reactions to the trucker protests here in Canada. I have been personally shocked at the appetite for unleashing state violence on the part of our Laurentian, ruling class.
Well, put it this way. If those truckers had noodle arms like Antifa and they had hoodies and they have
drank cocoa,
nasal voices or pajama voice, then they could have burned it all down like they did for 120 days, $2 billion, 1,500 policemen, and nobody said a word. But because those guys fit a particular stereotype of losing North American lower middle class people,
then that was fair game to suggest all sorts of things. And remember, there's this Peter Strzok, Lisa Page vocabulary: smelly people, Joe Biden, chumps, drags. John McCain, the crazies are out. Barack
Crazy
Obama,
birds,
the
right?
trainers.
Yeah.
What was the deplorables, irredeemables, the basket?
The
How
basket.
did they put it in the basket? They have a basket full of deplorables, like an Easter basket. I didn't understand that image.
You're getting religious again. Okay, let's see. On free speech, from Mike, there seems to be significant efforts to punish and crush speech that counteracts the MSM narrative. How does Victor see this battle for free speech playing out?
It's kind of ironic. I went to university when I was 17 in 1971, and all I heard from the left is, this is the free speech area at UC Santa Cruz. If I go up to the bookstores in Berkeley, this is the free speech, anything goes. And I was shocked that when I hear professors use the F word, the S word. But that was what the left said. We're not going to ban Lady Chatterley's lover. And I was in a Latin class reading the Satyricon in Latin, and somebody said, I want you to know that the crazy religious right banned every translation of Petronius until 1960. Can you believe it? That's what I grew up on. And now to see the left go full Soviet and ban what they call hate speech. And another thing about this element is, you've created I really do think this is connected. When you have coddled a whole generation, and at the same time, you've given them no initiative, responsibility, and they are not marrying, they're not having children, they're not buying homes,
Right.
down to 1.7 fertility rate from 2.1 just 20 years ago. These people are prolonged, just like Tocqueville said, they're prolonged adolescents, and they're very sensitive. And so they have microaggressions, they have hate speech. And at some point, somebody is going to do that Apple commercial in 2004. Right? A woman runs in and throws the thing into the screen, and bam, somebody's going to say, I don't give a blank. You're starting to see Trevor Noah and Bill Maher do that. And the questioner had a good point that seemed I was more frustrated or angry or more zealous. I think all of us have to step up now and just say, you know what? Take your best shot.
Call me a racist.
Call me a racist or a hate speech or a microaggressor, but
does kind of feel like some of that stuff's coming to a head, and part of coming to a head is that nobody's playing for like the cry wolf anymore. But
Well, I mean, I did just get a 30-day ban from Facebook on the accusation that I'm a racist, which was based on nothing.
yeah, and there's major tantrum going on about the whole thing about Elon Musk taking over Twitter or whatnot.
Yeah, I don't know. Like Musk, that's a whole other subject, but like I'm not hard on any side because like it's funny, he's a really divisive guy that people either see him as like some kind of like technical messiah, and other people see him as just a pure fraud. I think he's, some of each.
Yeah, people don't trust
I
him
think-
just as much as the other thing. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
no, 'cause, like, I mean, there's a
bored
bit
with
like
him.
people have made lists. You could probably look one up. A list of all of his promises. I mean, like he said we'd be on Mars by now. Like I think he said that 5-6 years ago. He was like, "Oh, we'll be on Mars by 2021 or something." Whatever. Like again, you can look him up. But people have made all like he said that like by now you'd be like going from Los Angeles to San Francisco for $1 on his vacuum tube subway. He makes all these things. He'd be making 1 million Teslas by now, and like none of it's ever panned out. But he's got some kind of charm, and I do like how he messes with people on Twitter.
Well, if he actually has some sort of capability, because there's a bunch of stuff about him getting on the board, but then if he gets on the board, he can't purchase more of it. So then he didn't get on the board, and now they're trying to test him, saying, "Oh well, what you did was some sort of insider trading thing of announcing that you're going to do this or that to drive prices down or up."
Yeah, he's getting sued now.
It's all ridiculous. But if he ever got some sort of leverage of making them actually get a little bit more free in their speech, that would be cool and fine by that. But I totally agree with the people who think, well, he's not our savior.
Yeah,
I
definitely
don't know.
funny. Like I love how he pokes at the left,
Yeah.
but yeah, at the same time, like the whole thing where he pretended to invent the unfeasible vacuum tube subway that was invented over 100 years ago. Like
Isn't that still going, or is that just done?
technically, but like apparently it's on. I don't
Didn't
know.
he announce he was going to become sort of like candy store at some point or something?
I don't know. Again, like that's one thing is like he kind of gets away with a lot. It's really amazing that a guy in his position gets to mouth off as much as he does, and people don't hold his feet to the fire when he doesn't come through. But I don't know.
Yeah, he did. He was gonna do a candy store called
Weird.
Boring Candy. Teslarati. What the heck? But I never saw that pan out either at all. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I watched this.
This one is one of the ones where John Stossel's covered it, and this lady points out that there's all these children's books.
27. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. See, there's an example of like, I like Ginsburg, I guess. Like, I mean, it's like I respect her. She had a great career. She's, she's always worth listening to her opinion when she spoke, But the way that they have beatified her is genuinely creepy.
I don't think a kid needs to know about Ruth Bader Ginsburg until maybe in their 20s, and it strikes them as interesting.
Exactly. No, exactly. But no, she's a saint. She's been sainted by the left.
Yeah, and it is
That's
the
what's
thing,
happening.
but that's what this whole thing
Books
shows that
about former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Great. There are also a ton about Kamala Harris. Great.
There are lots of books.
there's so many of those. I've seen those things go through. I mean, I should just walk into the last Barnes and Noble around and see what it does look like, because you hear
Yeah,
all
I
these
haven't
things,
been
but I
in a Barnes
believe
and
it.
Noble, and I don't think I've been in a bookstore of like a chain bookstore for more than 5 years.
So then you wonder, like, the end of it, like what part of that comes from like woke ink type stuff. If they also know that like you and I are never going to go in that bookstore, so people
Yeah.
who can't get in here are nutty activists.
Books on people like Hillary Clinton, Justice Sotomayor, Rachel Carson, AOC, Elizabeth Warren, Greta Thunberg.
How dare you?
But where are the biographies on conservatives? Mendel couldn't find any. Not one on Amy Coney Barrett or Margaret Thatcher or Winston Churchill. None.
I don't think kids need those either. But like, where?
Yeah, no, it reminds me of like when Crowder does this whole thing about Wikipedia editors, and like they edited an article with the source, a reference quote, like a reference source of Thomas Sowell, and the Wikipedians come back and say, well, he's not an economist expert. So it's that same kind of thing. I
Yeah,
was like, oh no, no, not him. I don't know. It's like I'm laughing because it's so pathetic, but it's also so scary. Because that's all of the dark comedy that came out of the post-Soviet world about communism. It is funny because it was so absurd.
yeah.
It was so farcical. But the thing where the emperor has no clothes, where everybody's just kind of going on with it, to the point where like nobody looks the other way when the neighbor gets dragged out of the house in the middle of the night and disappears.
Well, I won't get into it, but I had somebody who I know this week who was suddenly out of nowhere. I didn't realize they've been reading some books, and it turns out Lenin and Stalin weren't too bad of guys, type of stuff. You're like, what are you reading? And you're not this guy. Like, why are you suddenly reading these books? You know what I mean? And it's kind of just part of the zeitgeist of that era.
Or anti-racist baby word book in bulk by libraries. And so they have this incentive built in to continue to churn out progressive ideological books.
So there's been a lot of stuff of your boy Zach in Diversity in Comics. His channel is called Comics Matter now. Nerd Roddick, who used to own a comic shop in San Francisco, he's one of the guys who pulled up that stuff of those Amaze videos this week, where people were basically trying to show those like what to think about porn to kids type videos of training kids of how to think about porn type stuff that were some mind-blowing stuff. They both talked about how one of the reasons Marvel and one of the reasons DC got all crazy of doing these big runs of these social justice books is because when the purchaseship started going down just of comics in general, they found out that libraries still bought them, and libraries would buy them if they had a social justice message to them.
Yeah.
And so the comics went woke because of library purchases.
Yeah. No, it's funny because like it's like the same kind of thing that the liberals always complained about the textbook thing, was that because Texas was the largest purchaser and Texas is heavily conservative. And of course they complained rightfully, we can't let one political party have that, or political ideology have that much sway over something like libraries. But again, when the shoe's on the other foot,
That's one of my finger pointings at the right wing all these years, is that I do think back in our day in the 90s and the early 2000s, we used to sneer at them because we were just mad that they didn't value art or these types of things because they were above it or something like that, like doesn't make money or something. They didn't realize how big of a cultural loose thread that was to unravel everything. They had no idea, and they are the ones who let it go. They're the ones who devalued the concept of librarians, and they left the void. You didn't realize you needed gatekeepers there.
What, all librarians lean left?
Mostly, yeah.
That surprised me. I think of librarian.
Why? I don't think that would surprise you.
That wouldn't surprise me now.
I bet he wasn't surprised either. So
As apolitical researchers and teachers. But look
there's
at
no such thing as that anymore. That doesn't exist anymore.
their
Yeah.
political donations. 90% went to Democrats.
I'm surprised it's that low, honestly. I'm surprised it's not 100%.
To a book publisher, libraries matter more than parents. Because while a parent might buy a few books,
Or even just comic purchasers. They matter more than your neckbeards. These libraries buy more comics than neckbeards do now.
Yeah, and then they never
Lib-
get checked out.
Yep.
But that
libraries
doesn't
buy
matter.
hundreds.
They get buried. They just get buried, and they're auto purchases by some of these librarians.
Paid for by you.
It's our tax dollars buying 1,000 copies of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and zero about Amy Coney Barrett.
It's what buys Ta-Nehisi Coates' version of Captain America that no regular human wanted to read. There was I think on Dave Rubin this week, he had on David Mamet. David Mamet had a pretty good portion where he's talking about nobody's actually interested in listening to this stuff. Nobody's reading this stuff. Nobody's like, oh boy, show me this movie and stuff. It's that the gatekeepers are purchasing it. The gatekeepers
Yeah.
are purchasing all the stuff. It's not the actual people.
Mandel's book about Coney Barrett says things like, for Amy,
Netflix CEOs purchase it for their ESG score, or even if it's just because it's for PR, even before ESG concepts, and nobody watches the stuff.
being a mother is no less important than being a judge.
In girls' children's literature, there's absolutely zero messaging about motherhood. They are told you can be an NASA scientist, you can be an entomologist. None mention did they have children. And girls are not taught that you can have all these career ambitions and also be a mother.
My husband
So that older side is like, well, we need to push our politics too. And there's some level of me like, well, where is the people just saying, let's let kids be kids again? Like, where's the kids cartoon that's just stupid anymore? You know, just
Man,
complete stupid fun, you know?
SpongeBob is so classically good. And like that was before, like, that show came out when I was, already a late teen. And I didn't watch it until I was in my 20s. I watched it when it was already in reruns, but I was like, I understood why that was so good. Because they're like, there's no preaching. There's
Kids
never a
shouldn't
moral
be
lesson. So
the
that reminds me of
kids,
something
man.
is that like, because that thing you sent me about the porn cartoon for kids. I think I saw something John Larson said. You can tell what an ideology is really about by looking at what they teach their youngest people.
Yeah.
Because it's all put into little, simple, clear sentences. And we just look at what the queer theorists have developed for children. And now we know what's up with that. YouTube just recommended this lady's channel to me, obviously on the basis that I watch a lot of how people cook food things. And she had a whole thing about, and this is an Orthodox Jewish lady, sounds like she's from New York, because she says off.
Man, I listened to David Mamet. After a minute, his accent got so irritating to me that I was like, I almost can't talk. We didn't do talking like this. Like, yeah, I couldn't. I almost can't understand you, man.
But yeah, I got into this lady because, she was, how do I prepare, all my food for the Sabbath? But then, so I started watching this stuff, and then there's this fascinating thing. So yeah, start playing it.
There are so many reasons as to why women have to cover their hair. And the basic reason is it's a sign for us that we are married. So this is like a kippah, like a yarmulke. When a man wears it, it's like a sign for him that there's a God above him and watching over him. For women, it's a sort of kind of basically the same thing. We cover our head as a sign for us that we have a husband and that woman.
So that's basically what Mormon theology is about men and women and stuff. And I just wonder if John Larson would be willing to tell this woman that she has the blood of gay and transgender Orthodox Jewish teens on her hand for pushing this evil and wicked idea. Do you think that the John DeLynn and Kara would be willing to put out a 2-minute TikTok about how the destruction and damage this lady's doing? But then the other fascinating thing about this is like, because you're like, oh, I can see her hair right now. No, that's a wig. And I just learned today that it's very common because like the Jewish law says that married Jewish women have to cover their hair.
They can
But
wear
apparently
wigs.
there's a loophole.
That's one of
You
those
can just
Sabbath
wear-
day loopholes.
Yeah, the loophole is you can just wear a wig. And I just looked this up, and it's funny. I saw a thing literally just in the few minutes before we started podcasting today, and there's like even a little comment chain where somebody's like, excuse me, but isn't that kind of defeating the purpose if you can just put on like a really great looking wig and that's not your, but it's funny because like in this whole episode, like you don't ever see her hair. Not once.
Gosh.
You know? But my point is just like the idiotic hypocrisy and narrow-mindedness of the John Lewis. Because like I guarantee John Larson would never come out in public and say about this woman and her beliefs what he says about the Mormons and their beliefs. You know?
They dare do it to like a Bible Belt Christian or something like that.
Yeah.
But I bet you a Christian from Africa with those same exact beliefs, they'd get suddenly real touchy about it.
Undoubtedly, yeah. But just funny because like I just watched this and like, that's things what she says. That's basically what Mormons believe. Like in the temple, right? Men swear to follow God and women swear to follow their husbands. She more or less repeated that, like, and
It's sexist.
and we already know that. Like we know, like you can look up halakha. There's 3,000 years of writing on this subject. Is that woman murdering gay Jews by putting out a YouTube channel where she expounds those things? Obviously, that's absurd. It's completely insane.
Would they get upset at David Mamet for saying what everyone else is afraid to say? I mean, there is some sort of level where they do sometimes treat Jews as a touchy class that they can't touch, and other times they're white men, and you can.
You know who David Mamet's daughter is, right?
Who?
That's Josha Mamet. She's. Do you remember Girls?
Oh, there was a bunch of. I don't know which one it is, but yeah, there was a bunch.
Oh, it's like if you look at her, like
Brian Williams' daughter is in that show too.
Oh, but it's funny because like just looking at this still of David Mamet, I'm like, yes, I can kind of see.
Let me see if I'm right on which one it was. Nope, I was wrong. I thought it was the other girl in the show, but now I see her for sure. Yeah, yeah. Brian Williams' daughter's in that show too.
Weird.
Spelled her
That
name.
show is. I watched, I think, a season of that when I lived at your place.
I watched one season of it too.
Allison Williams. That's Brian Williams' kid. It's weird. I didn't.
I mean,
know.
all of Hollywood is just nepotism now.
Yeah, no, I just barely learned that. What's his name? Alexander Sadiq, the guy who played Dr. Bashir on Deep Space Nine, is Malcolm McDowell's nephew.
Well, check this out. I learned the drummer from Slipknot is Max Weinberg of the E Street Band's drummer's son. Like,
what?
Yeah.
For real?
For real.
Max Weinberg is such a classy dude.
Yeah, well, the Slipknot drummer is.
Holy crap! That's a weird one.
Yeah,
and everybody knows that Marilyn Manson was the kid from Wonder Years.
Yeah, I wonder if that one's not true, right?
No, it's definitely not true.
He
just that guy, like they did like a reunion photo with him and Fred Savage and whoever, and like I can't remember if it was him or Marilyn. I guess Marilyn Manson's keeping it low profile now, but he said something like, "Yeah, I'm still not Marilyn Manson."
See, I knew it. Jay Weinberg.
That's holy crap! I want him to sit in for Conan.
There they are together.
Holy crap! That is so nuts.
Yeah,
boy. How much money did drums make for that family?
Yeah. That's so funny. Listen how thick his Jewish accent voice is. But yeah, he's just talking straight crap on Hollywood all the way through this one. It's a good episode.
I gotta watch this.
Nobody saw those movies, right? Because nobody says, honey, let's look through the TV guide thing and see if there's any wonderful things about racism or anything about the person. I really, you know what I like at the end of the day? There's some really great diversity humor, right? There isn't any.
Yeah. Diversity humor is racist humor.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a interesting episode.
I'm gonna check that out.
But yeah, he's got a lot of good stuff in him. But then he's so Jewish. He goes all these Jewish stories and all that stuff. I like a guy like that because he's ex-Jewish, like atheist, whatever, but then is fully into the Bible and Jewishness and old Jewish stories and old Jewish things. And I identify with that. Like,
I was just reading yesterday that under Israeli law, there are 4 classes of Judaism. There's There's Haredi are the Orthodox, religious Zionism, Datim, Masortim are traditional, and Hiloni are the secular.
Crap.
Yeah, I've just been digging into a bunch of Jewish stuff lately. In part because, like I said, I started watching this lady's channel, and it's kind of funny. Like, it's slightly creepy. She has a little bit of that Martha Stewart uncanny perfection that just kind of like, but like, it's really fascinating. Like, she seems to be a totally put together lady running a house with kids and doing the whole thing where you can't turn on the stove for all of Saturday. But yeah, no, it's fascinating stuff. But I was thinking about this because, like, I remember when I found out that there were about as many Jews in the world as Mormons. It was really surprising because, like media, right? Like, we growing up, like, Judaism is so disproportionately represented, and it's obviously just because they're put together people, they're great writers, they're producers, they do all this stuff. I put it together later. Where it's like, oh, it's because it's a little bit like, why are Kenyans great runners? Because it's in their culture. Why are Jews great storytellers? Because it's in their culture.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, because like, Seinfeld, all the Mel Brooks movies, like, yeah, like, is like, I remember that time I would have guessed like, well, there's probably like at least 100 times as many Jews as Mormons. There must be. Like, no, there's 50 million in the whole world, and 5 million of them are in Israel. There's about as many Jews in America as Mormons. Yeah, we probably know way more about Jews than Jews know about Mormons, and rightfully so. Because Mormon television sucks.
Speak of the devil, Jonathan Streeter just sent me an article about a bunch of Jews who came out to watch some Mormons put on Fiddler on the Roof, and they came to see if they did a decent job of putting on Fiddler on the Roof. And I said to them, I remember watching this in 1980 something, and I thought, boy, 2022 comes around and the hens are gonna come home to roost, man.
I wonder what their review was.
I didn't get all the way through it, but hold on, I'll pull it up.
Cuba Gooding Jr. pled guilty to being a sneaky creep.
Uh-oh. I'd seen videos of that years ago of him supposedly grabbing some woman in a...
I didn't even know.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's the same thing, but I remember there was like video of him doing it, like grabbing on some woman just like in a bar or something, but it wasn't clear-cut video. You got the end of me like, I don't know about that, but can an all Mormon cast pull off Fiddler on the Roof?
I want to know.
Utah to find out. It's gonna
What
be
channel is it? Oh, it's a website.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, this is but it should read like a like one of those fact check things. It says fact check, false, fact check, to Mormon.
Yeah. And like,
look how long the article is though.
It's already old news, but I will never, ever, ever, ever let the left live down the 93% peaceful thing. Because like, I just keep thinking about all the other things that are 93% peaceful, like World War II and my parents' marriage was 93% peaceful.
Look how long this article is, man.
Holy crap.
So what do you think? I hear a girl ask her boyfriend. I don't know, he says. I expected it to be more about a fiddler on a roof.
Let's go get some root beer. Yeah, I'll check that out. Have we got anything else?
Nah, this is just the thing I was saying with Gary from Nerdrotic. Turning Point USA had him on, but he was one of the guys who first found this channel of
Oh yeah. Amaze.org. I didn't see this.
Okay, Gary, let's take a look into this. Let's do a deep dive, right? So this is not Disney. This is a YouTube channel that is being recommended by school districts for teachers to use to indoctrinate their children on their website. They're called Amaze. Okay, Gary? So on their website, here's a quote from their website. Amaze envisions a world that recognizes child and adolescent sexual development as natural and healthy. A world in which young people everywhere are supported and affirmed, and the adults in their lives communicate openly and honestly with them about puberty, reproduction, relationships, sex, and sexuality.
Sounds like the Family International. You know about them? It was that crazy cult. I think the Joaquin Phoenix were in it. David Berg, that's the name. David Berg was their founder, and he was an ultra sex creep of the worst kind. I've watched documentaries about people who are in it, and basically he believed the same thing about children and sex as that Amaze.org about us thing just said. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, just one other thing. On the last podcast, I was talking about all these different shows that had fake characters. I since watched a documentary on one of the shows on the girl from Plainview, and one of the characters that I thought didn't exist turns out did exist. It's in the documentary of the girl from Plainview, the girl who got her boyfriend to commit suicide. But it was still, some journalists found out about this girl and that they were friends, and then that journalist read into it saying, I think that she probably had lesbian leanings for that girl. So the character did exist, and I said the character didn't exist at all, and that's just one of them. But I
At
still
least a
think
human person, but yeah.
they're still inventing in that she did all that stuff out of denied lesbianism. I also started watching a show, The Impeachment, the Monica Lewinsky show.
Oh boy,
Holy crap! I
that's
was
just
telling,
whitewash.
I was watching it. I was about to start. I've only seen one episode, but right before the girlfriend wanted to see it, and I said, I don't want to watch that. And she said, why do you want to see it? This channel, do you know what this channel is? Like they're going to be so full of crap, and obviously, it's more the Linda Tripp is the devil story so far.
Yeah.
Is what it seems like. Linda Tripp was just an.
Have they done any of
president.
the?
Hillary Clinton doesn't exist. She's not in the show.
So the
She's
story
not part of any of it.
Is there anything in the story about how the Clinton administration and the Democratic Party and major left-wing media conspired to smear Monica Lewinsky until the blue dress blew up that whole narrative?
So far, it's just Linda Tripp is a vindictive crazy. That's episode 1. And
See, that's one of the things like that I learned later on in life. Cause like, I was what, like 16, 17, something like that, 17, 18 when that whole thing happened. And cause like, I remember the time, like when the blue dress came out and there was a blue dress. And I was like, why is everybody perseverating on this? Like, and I didn't realize until later looking back and was that the reason the blue dress was important was that the administration was already like 24, 48 hours into their full-on coordinated smear campaign that Monica Lewinsky was a mentally ill stalker and was making it all up for attention. And they were already into that. And the reason the blue dress mattered so much was that the blue dress proved that that was all a lie. But alas, like so many things, it's all been memory hold as far as the left is concerned.
well, and now this new thing, which I knew was just going to be a completely biased piece of crap thing. I'd love to watch a story about this that was more objective. It doesn't need to be a right-wing slant on it or anything, like, or each side gives their side or whatever. But so far, they've just transferred that to Linda Tripp. Linda Tripp is a vindictive stalker or pissed off person type deal. I read some articles on it, like, what the crap is this? And I read some articles. It says Edie Falco plays Hillary Clinton. And then some people said, but she never appears. She's never there. I think she was in, like, it has her name in like the titles and all that stuff. But I think she was in some deleted scenes or something that they removed, but they still left her name in the billing. I don't know if that appears later or something like that, but there's no Hillary Clinton, and Bill Clinton didn't show up till the last second. And there's complete, if you want some victim blaming, here's some victim blaming, because they're showing every single one of the women that he did this to so far, because they don't even show like even a fraction of all the women who supposedly like complained about it.
Yeah.
But that it's victim blaming if you got to use the leftist term of all this stuff. And that's just another this week in Spidey sense of bullcrap revisionist Hollywood shit.
And then talking about a time when Saturday Night Live was funny. Do you remember who SNL got to play Linda Tripp? Do you remember what Linda Tripp looked like, right?
Yeah, well, no, because on this, you know who's playing her now?
Who?
Sarah Paulson.
Oh,
yeah, but they
that's
have her
terrible,
all.
Cast.
They have her all made up. They have her really made up.
that's
You wouldn't recognize her.
Oh, fine. She's a great. I mean, because Sarah Paulson, she's one of the greatest actors of our generation, of this generation of American actors. Anyway, the SNL had John Goodman play her.
I remember that. Yeah.
That's perfect. Alrighty. Have we done enough Spidey sense?
Yeah, I miss when SNL gave it to Bill Clinton good and hard for years, and now they never do that.
I remember the bit they did when he was running for president that just showed him going into a because he's doing I'm a regular guy on a jog and I'm just a regular guy gonna go into a bagel shop.
Yeah,
and he's like talking about Ignakas. Now just pretend I come along here and eat some of your French fries.
Some of your side, because he used to during that time frame he was trying to act like he was a jogger and a workout person and just like, look, I'm a normal jogger. I go on jogs, and then he goes to the McDonald's and eats everybody's McDonald's.
Oh, the show used to be funny.
Phil
Mamet.
Hartman doing it too. Oh,
Perfection.
poor Phil Hartman.
Yeah,
Anyway.
every year that Phil Hartman was on that show is a season worth watching.
Same with Simpsons.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty,
Sweet.
cool. See you
Later.